Welcome to the start of your first year of not drinking. You've got through the initial phase, the illness type of getting the withdrawal symptoms out of your system and getting the addiction out of your system and the drug out of your system. You've looked at some of those emotions that the addiction uses to get you back into drinking early doors, and you've had a look at those and you've managed to deal with them as and when they crop up, and now you have your first year, which can be a very good time or a very bad time, depending on the way you approach it. And one of the main factors that the drink will try and use to get you back drinking during this time is fear of missing out, or FOMO, if you like acronyms. Three key things here. First of all, the fear of missing out, the fear that somehow there's a big party out there going on that you're not invited to, and that your life is very miserable because of that. We're also going to be looking at the lows that you have to go through, or when you go through a period of boredom especially is quite fatal. And we're also going to be looking even more, which can be even more dangerous, at the highs that you may experience within your first year. Let's start by discussing the big party that's going on out there that you're not invited to. And the addiction loves to tell you this. It absolutely loves it. To say, it's everyone out there's having a great time. They're having a great time. Just look through the window and you can see them there. They're having such fun. And this is reinforced, isn't it, by, what you see in the media, where everybody's out drinking and having a good time. It's almost like drink and having a good time are synonymous with each other. You've internalized that within your mind. I certainly had, as far as I was concerned, who the hell ever did anything without having a drink? I mean, how did people actually have a good time without having a drink? To me, it was almost incomprehensible at the end of my drink. And of course, it's rubbish, but it's difficult to appreciate that it's rubbish while you're in the throes of addiction. Certainly, even when you've put the drink down and throughout your first year. Go out either with somebody you know quite well who drinks heavily, or with a group of people that you know quite well who drink heavily. Go out on a night with them. You don't drink, and you watch them. Hang out with them for the next few hours, and you watch and see how they behave, what they do, and what they say. And I can guarantee you that you will find them loud, repetitive, and nowhere near as funny as you think. It can become like a Groundhog Day, the way they behave. I had somebody I knew who used to be very interesting to talk to politically. I used to enjoy talking to him. We'd go out, we'd drink, and we'd shoot the shit, and we'd go on and on and on for hours. And I went out with him sober while he was drinking, and I realized that every 20 minutes or so, he was simply repeating himself. I don't always urge people who are stopping drinking to put themselves into drinking environments, because it's not very healthy and it's quite easy to pick up a drink. However, in order to understand this properly, one of the best ways to do that is to observe people who are drinking over a period of time. You can just keep going for hours on end, because basically you're simply feeding the addiction. You're drinking and drinking and drinking, but you're not actually engaging in anything meaningful. You're not actually talking about anything meaningful. You really are not doing anything other than drinking. You might as well be sat at home drinking with a load of noise on in the background. The human brain tends to function at optimal capacity for concentration, and at its most efficient for periods of about 90 minutes. And after that, generally, your mind needs to come down. It needs to rest for a while before you can engage again in any task, any cognitive task, any mentally demanding task. I'm a lawyer. I find this, when I'm reviewing very heavy documentation, or even when I'm networking or talking to people or talking to clients, or having a big meeting, 90 minutes. Really, after that, I need a bit of downtime. It's the law of diminishing returns when it comes to concentration. My concentration starts to lag. Now, it may well be that if you can go on for a bit longer than that, maybe a couple of hours, maybe even 3 hours, but generally you can't go on for hours and hours and hours on end. There have been scientific studies to show that the most effective way of studying, for instance, or the most effective way of engaging a mental task is to do it for 90 minutes and then taking a significant break. And the same is true for when you go out with friends. If you all went out sober After about 90 minutes, you'd have had some very good quality conversation. You'd have had a very good time. You'd probably have a bit of downtime, and then you might be able to go again for another hour or so. And then you've probably had enough. You can quite easily disabuse yourself of the notion that everyone is out there having a good time with the drink. They're not. People can go out to a function, have a fantastic time and have a couple of drinks. But let me tell you, correlation does not equal causation. It's not necessarily the drinks that are giving you the good time. You would be having the good time without the drinks. Yes? The drinks simply enable you to go on longer and longer because you repeat yourself. You don't put yourself under the pressure of spending hours and hours and hours and hours and thinking you've not had a good time unless you've been out for bloody 7 hours. Socializing, because your brain isn't equipped to do that. And the only way that you can do that is under the influence of a narcotic. And let me tell you, it's incredibly boring being under the influence of a narcotic for 7 hours and just doing the same thing and repeating yourself over and over again. The key here is good quality socializing. You realize that your brain's good for about 90 minutes. Go out, be charming, talk to people, have a good time with people, but then realize that after that period of time, you've probably had enough. You want to go home, you want to have a cup of tea, you want to watch some TV, veg out, play computer games, do whatever it is you do to relax. But you've had enough. And trust me, the people that you're out with are not going to think any less of you. They'll probably think you were great that night, and then they'll get on with their kind of endless loop of drinking, and they won't remember half of it the next day anyway, because they'll just be doing the same thing over and over again. But don't be hard on yourself, be kind to yourself, and realize that you're not missing out if you're not out there slogging yourself half to death for 8 hours. If a friendship is based mostly on drinking, you might want to question whether or not it is indeed a friendship or just an association with a co-addict for the purposes of drinking. Let me tell you, the last thing you need when you stop drinking is your former drinking buddies, people that you're just with for the purposes of drinking. They really have got nothing to offer you. There are two other things to be aware of within this period of a year when you first stop drinking. First of all, there are going to be lows. There are going to be long stretches where it can be very boring and you have to get through those without a drink. And then more dangerously, I think, there are going to be highs. There are going to be times when things are amazing for you. And what would make them even better? A drink, of course. I remember in sobriety, my other half used to like taking me to weddings. I'm not very keen on weddings. I like weddings, but again, if they're only for a short period of time and they're nice and quick and snappy and I can get something to eat and I enjoy them and I only have a period of time during which I'm able to concentrate meaningfully, and then I need a break. I can't go on and on for hours. I was taken to a wedding once that lasted about 12 hours, and to say it was challenging was an understatement. You know, I just sat there. It felt like it was dragging on forever. You know, between one piece of action and the other piece of action, and of course, again, you run out of things to say. You run out of energy in which to have conversations anyway. I'm not the kind of person that can spend hours and hours and hours talking to people, and I don't think that most people are that kind of person, to be honest. So it really is an artificial environment. And that is one time where you can be very much at risk from picking up a drink, because instinctively you know that the drink alleviates boredom by making you forget everything at intervals and then repeating it all again ad nauseam. So it's very tempting to use the drink. My way of getting around that really would be to excuse myself for a while, maybe go to the car, have a kip even in the car for a few minutes or somewhere else if you can, and then going back to the party and engaging a bit more. And I would try and break it down into bite-sized chunks for myself. But more importantly, I would plan for it and I would expect it. Try not to be caught unaware by these things. And if you have a partner that insists upon taking you to them, you know, make sure your partner is aware of these being very danger areas for you and is sympathetic to that. The key here is to plan for long events or things that you know are going to test you, are going to be boring. Don't put yourself through grueling things unless you absolutely have to. I think you have to be very aware of the highs. There will be times within your sobriety, trust me, there will be many times in your sobriety where you have triumphed where you will have an amazing thing. For me, at the age of 40, I went back to law school, or I went to law school for the first time, and I came top of my year in law school because I had that kind of bloody-minded, single-minded determination, an obsession brain to do well. And I came top of my year, and the high was incredible. It was an incredible high. I came from being a drunk to being the best law student in my year at university. And at that point, the drink, the addiction, literally comes in and it puts its arm around your shoulders in your moment of happiness and triumph. And it says to you, you know what would make this even better? You know what would be the icing on the cake for you? What would make this fantastic for you? Just have a drink. That will top it off for you. And that is worse than I've always found the hard times to be a challenge, to be things that you can get through, you can beat the addiction. You see the addiction as the enemy, but in the good times when the addiction comes to you as a friend, and that's when it's very, very, very difficult to resist. And you have to be very aware that it's during the highs and during the good times when you feel great, when your body and your health feels good, and maybe when you haven't had a drink for a long time and you've achieved something because you've stopped drinking. And then it's at those times that the addiction will whisper to you, it will speak to you like a friend, and it will say, just have a drink and make sure that you are ready for it, so that when it comes to you to say that, you know, and you can tell it to fuck off. I'm not sure that I agree with the concept of an addictive personality. I think that a dependence on any substance, it can be a continuum, and it certainly is with alcohol. Some people have a very low level dependence, where they only need a bottle of wine every now and again. Some people need a glass of wine every night. Some people drink a lot all the time and then can stop for periods of time, and it doesn't seem to affect them very much. I mean, these videos are directed at people like me who don't really seem to have an off switch when they start drinking, and where alcohol affects their life. It affects your ability to enjoy life and live life. It becomes an obsession with you. Now, I should say, or I've already said, I'm not so sure I agree with the concept of an addictive personality, but I do agree that certain types of people that get addicted to drink, like me, can be obsessive about things, can be very single-minded, and can have that kind of personality. And it's very, very useful for you to use that single-mindedness and that personality to get obsessions in healthy areas, such as, going to the gym. If you're a man, you can go to the gym, you can build some iron, you can make yourself strong. If you're a woman, you can make yourself fit, you can make yourself look as good as you want, look as good as you can. Self-esteem, the better you look, the easier it is to have self-esteem. Not just that it's based on your looks, but it's a very huge component, in my opinion. And you can have, you need to get interested in things, either interested in study or interested in learning a trade or learning a musical instrument or just doing something. Occupy yourself and give yourself goals. Because again, one thing the addiction loves is a rudderless person with no goals. I didn't really have any goals. And when I talk about goals, I'm not talking about some kind of ephemeral, goal of winning the lottery or something ridiculous like that. I'm talking about concrete steps to get to a position that you want to be and to get somewhere that you want to be. Nothing is more fatal to that vicious baboon sitting in that cage than you having a purpose elsewhere. He wants you fixating on him all the time. He wants you navel gazing, and he wants you obsessing about him. Replace that obsession with other things, good things that will serve you well in your life. You can do this because it's all learned behavior. It really is. It's a case of realizing what it is, examining what it is, unlearning the bad behavior, and then starting to learn the good behavior. I hope these videos have helped people. I've got a lot more videos. There's a lot more to cover. For instance, I'm going to make further videos about partners when you stop drinking, because let me tell you, that can be a whole thing in itself. And codependents, people that are close to you. They might not be as happy about you stopping drinking as you might imagine. These are entirely different topics that we will be covering. I have a website up and I have a mailing list, and I will have a PDF document which will give very, very helpful practical tips on how to stop drinking, how to ditch the booze, especially if you feel that the booze is really affecting your life. I have not had a drink for 14 years. I've been sober now for 14 years. I've had the most amazing time within that 14 years. The whole point of making these videos is to try and help people, especially at the moment, because I know a lot of people will be in lockdown, will have been in lockdown with the virus, and will be drinking heavily. So if you can watch out for my next videos, that would be great. Please visit my website at ditchthebooze.com for more tips and inspiration on ditching the booze.